Hi guys, it's Alan here. It's Merry Christmas. It's actually 1:30 in the morning here in Salem, Oregon, and it's not Christmas anymore. It's 26th of December. So hope you all had a good holiday and Christmas. And I just wanted to do a quick thing on targeted individuals, of which I am one. I have my V2K yappers listening to me even now, and part of something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough is what is believed to be potentially the role of life insurance. For many of us who have V2K and the RNM synthetic telepathy, where we can hear them listening to the thoughts and all that, and many of us have gone through pain, and our doctors can't tell us what the pain is caused by for years. So we just get stuck with, all right, we get our medication, we're thankful for that, but you just want it taken care of, fixed, and hopefully your doctor will send you to a specialist and they'll fix it. And you never heard of this, like me, of B2K or targeted individuals. You never hear of it. And the thing is, in regards to life insurance, the least and farthest thing from your mind is the idea or the belief that your doctor or your little city hall is planning on your death to fulfill a life insurance policy. And the idea that they would do all this torture and punishment to you, and you might be the nicest person in the world. Lots of people, in my own case, I didn't start feeling a side pain until I was about 15, 16. I broke my left arm and my shoulder. In football, my side, my left shoulder, that was broken, but this was fine. But until about 16, 17, I started getting quick zaps right here. My heart's right here, but I get it right here on the side. And so I wouldn't feel it. My shoulder was fine. This was all felt better. But then for years, and my side just started, my doctors couldn't answer it. They a couple times sent me to specialists, but I wouldn't get anything. And so I just kept on going. And then suddenly around 26, 20, I just tried to find anything that would help. I finally, around 27, 28, my doctor sent me to specialists and the whole OxyContin thing that happened to millions of people. But at least I was thankful for getting something that would help it. But then around 2016, out of the blue, after coming back from work, where I'd worked since 1991, getting the V2K. First, it was through the walls and the neighbor's apartment, neighbor's place, and underneath from the garage. And you just know somebody's messing with you. You don't know what reason, so you just keep your cool and just like, well, they'll find out I'm not a threat, and a little hearing little shudders. And then on your computer, it says on the Wi-Fi, it says FBI surveillance van. And you think, well, I'm not doing anything. I have nothing to worry about. But it keeps going, and suddenly, in my own case, got injured, fell out a window, had to learn to walk again. And of course, at that time, not anybody from Dallas, Oregon, said anything about this whole. And then it wasn't until probably months after learning to walk again that I started looking up things and realizing about what a targeted individual is. There's a name for hearing this, and it's not psychosis, it's actually a technology called voice to skull. And it's where they can, through voice patterns and frequency vibrations, through and to where you and you alone can hear it. It's a technology. I think Nick Begich and Dr. Robert Duncan talks about it as some of the stuff that they use on people. Anyway, one of the things, well, who's going to benefit from this? And as dark as it sounds, I lived in the same place same town more or less, except for 5 years where I went to 3 years in Bible college and 5 years in Bend, but more or less the same family of, and doctors and all that in the same town. But the idea is dark. The idea that somebody would actually, when you're a young child or a teenager, would plan for you to be their out, instead of just having the 401k and life insurance. I mean, the golden parachute. They also want to put you as their life insurance, and they're the beneficiary, and they may not even know you, but you and other people from maybe the same small town can have multiple online life insurance claims that you don't even know about. And all those years of directed energy weapons can be used to torture you until either you die from your injuries or the radiation or get cancer, or if the pain gets too much. Like in 2016, all the people started quitting the pain medication. And so a lot of people were dying from that, or overdosing, or ending their own life, unfortunately. But the idea is that these online life insurances, um, people can make claims and claim they know the person. So a lot of these target individuals have, like in my own case, um, after I went to the hospital and out the window, the police came in. My brother Dale Brewer, his girlfriend Sarah, was saying, "Oh, the police went and took a bunch of your papers, and months later returned all the paperwork. So now they know me, but most of my stuff on papers was just books on or notebooks on theology and philosophy. So it wasn't deeply personal. It was just that. So they could say I studied philosophy, theology. That's about it. Religion, cults, humanism, whatever. But anyway, it's the idea, and most I don't know much about as much about life insurance as I should. But the fact that the White House in 2011 and 2012, they do know about this because they opened their own doors on President Obama's bioethics meeting. And they had um, 12 to 15 different people. And actually, it was Anthony Fauci's wife, Dr. Christine Grady, that was the head of it, bioethics, in charge of one of the 12 people or so that were in charge of the target individual from 2009 to 2017. So they did it twice in 2011 and 2012, an open invitation to targeted individuals. And this was, this whole thing's been still going on even after 2017. And we had our Ella Free rally in Portland, which was just an hour from here. But even though I don't know if President Trump, still has anything going on. We haven't heard anything since. But we have to be aware, normally when it comes to crime, you have to look for who's going to benefit from this. And that's what the police on the TV show say, who's got what to benefit from this. So financially, and who can possibly benefit from torturing a person? Well, the government can, to see which technologies work in torture, to see what works and what doesn't work, and who else um, has the money or the technological know-how on brain imaging and topography, seeing on a computer, but the U.S. government. I mean, it's not in the news on the everyday 60 Minutes. They aren't admitting to mind reading or telepathy or being able to spot what a thought is or what a thought isn't saying or meaning, or we can read what a thought actually is. But when you have V2K and synthetic RNM, remote neural monitoring, you can hear what they're saying, what you're thinking, even though you're not actually saying it, the words. So we know they do have that ability. As crazy as it sounds, and for skeptics, I totally understand. It's hard to believe, but when you're actually experiencing it, and I'm the person that does doubt until it does happen to me. So I understand the doubters, the skeptics who say, well, You would think somebody would say, well, some people are saying about it, talking about it. There's quite a lot of us, thousands of us, but it still hasn't caught the everyday 60 minutes. It's not, they purposely try to keep the big stories out because whether it's like the Epstein thing, that they could have broke that story 3 years before, a lot of these big stories, people could have come and let people know about it years before, or the Weinstein scandal, but people still chose to sit on it. And so a lot of these stories either don't get permission to, or they're worried about the backlash, especially government money that they rely on in grants, or not getting beaten up at work or getting fired for doing something that, especially when it comes to the government, that exposes something that the government and the law enforcement is doing in order to get rich. And it's not just a few $100s here, a few thousand, it's life insurance money. And it's online, and it's something that life insurance doesn't really talk as much. I never heard of target individuals or voice to skull, synthetic telepathy. It's not until most of us have it happen to us, and we're thinking, well, somebody's messing with us. Somebody's playing a sick, rude, horrible joke, and then well, this, and then you find out, and you meet some, or you go to, like, I went to Portland, the Yellow Free thing, and I was thankful. It's the first time I actually meet it. But the whole idea of when you're 10 years old or 12 or 13 and you're in pain and nobody can tell you, your doctors won't tell you what it's from. And then you're 20 years old and 30 and you're still needing the medication and the pain's getting worse. And now it seems like the part that was originally painful is now almost like dead cells, like it's just dead tissue. Necrotic tissue used to be live nerves, but after years of directed energy weapons, it's now dead tissue, dead cells, and and you realize it's because somebody or a bunch of people in your small town or big city decided to make you part of their life insurance parachute, hoping that if you haven't died because of the torture or the radiation and cancer, then you'll off yourself, and then that life insurance will be kicked in and you and your friends can get all this money because they've been able to do their homework on you, study you, whether your thoughts, your memories, because they can read that and then claim, like, act like they know you. They know your story, but because they can just read the paperwork. Hey, Tanya, I didn't, you just looked over there. It's good to see you, Tanya. Hope you had a good Christmas there. So I was watching something on TV and made me think about this. I was looking at an SHP thing that reminded me, and it was really helpful. She's very smart, and it was something that reminded me, and it really clicked. There was this one of her sites about WikiLeaks, and about how they can, on WikiLeaks is trying to look into something, but it said WikiLeaks, and I looked on, and she had a bunch of different things to click on, like stopthecrime.org, or it was just written there. So I clicked on, and it perfectly imaged what I was going through. I mean, my entire life from 15, 16, going to study the library, and then having these little jolts and not knowing what it was. I just thought it was stress. But most people don't have that kind of stress when they're 15 or 16, suddenly jolts like that. And I had them all my life, especially in my early 20s and sometimes in my 30s. And it happened a few times every week. And now it's just, periodically, but it's more just a deadened necrotic tissue. But with the V2K, I didn't even, there's one good thing, maybe even a couple that came of it, because the V2K, because I didn't die yet and they couldn't collect on the insurance money, they decided to up the ante, and the the target individual stuff was starting to be more well known. The White House already had to have 2 bioethics meetings to pretend like they're going to do something about it, even though they know they're the only ones that has the money or the know-how to look at brain imaging and topography that can look at, okay, we know what this brain state is, and there's the memory, and there, it's not just like a symbolism. They can actually see it in the same time, not like a 5-second delay either. You can actually hear the two people. It's like they can hear it right then, right there. There's not a 5 or 10 second window of delay. It's like, and they can hear me right now, right this very second. But it's important that the insurance, here's the big scam. It is hard to, but prove, but then if you have doctors that are getting money from it, and the police being part of it too, and City Hall, well, they're the people in power that can actually correct and do something. So everything that the United States looks on other countries and looks at Hitler and looks at all the cruel tortures of other countries and celebrating all the rights of our own country, our country is just, we're the ones that pretty much invented, put all the money to make this stuff, along with China, Japan. They've been having these targeted individual groups in Japan for the last 15 to 20 years. You can see one of the guys being interviewed on Ella Free, and that he's been running these groups for targeted individuals and helping them come to the understanding of what's been going on to them. But because it's wireless technology, and normally you have to find experts that can know what to look for, because it becomes necrotic tissue, but they can just do a invisible hit and run. And over years of this wireless stuff hitting a particular organ, your brain, your side, your heart, for a lot of women and some guys, even a sexual, almost like a rape sensation, where they're being, like you think. Um, anyway, I got my little shirt here about V2K because I was thinking about it, and I wanted to use this as a thing so that somebody could look at it and maybe bring it up. And what's V2K? And it opens almost like an opening for discussion, almost like an evangelical. I want to tell you about what's going to happen or what is happening right now to innocent people. And hopefully, so it won't happen to you. So if you hear people saying they hear voices or jolts, you'll be able to understand this is something our own government and other governments around the world are doing to their people. And if it stops the money from flowing, and it puts enough of a threat to them, then hopefully that'll stop it. I don't know if the new president, Biden, or if President Trump will stay in through some, Hail Mary before the 20th of January. I just don't know. There's been enough craziness in the last 4 years. Nothing would surprise me. It's almost like the government has gone out of its way to show how corrupt the FBI is, to pit left versus right and right versus left, to demonize each other, and definitely to start all this violence and rioting, especially, and then blame it on liberals in liberal-run big cities, um, where there's predominantly more different minority groups, so they can blame it on them or blame it at the border or something. It's like literally they're trying to create an atmosphere of chaos, so they can, and then blame it on these rioters for spreading the pandemic. Now, the big thing that makes me wonder is, of course, wondering every night what that dinner table conversation is like between Anthony Fauci, who just had his birthday yesterday. Happy birthday, Mr. Fauci. Between him and his wife, his wife's was in charge of Obama's bioethics. Her and Dr. Amy Goodman from the University of Pennsylvania. So, and it's kind of like he's talking about a vaccine, Moderna, Pfizer. There's 2 or 3 other ones. And on her plate, or at least was all this knowledge about the target individual stuff, where we have potentially maybe some kind of weird scientific device. I don't like to use the word implantation, but we don't, what implant? Something that was put inside of us, like a hearing aid or pacemaker, or just another little trinket that was put inside of us to where we can now. Some people say it's not. It's without it's receiverless, like it's just our own brain that can been used to. I actually believe it's implanted in us. It might be small or indistinguishable from flesh, to where when they look for something, it's so small that they can't notice what it is. It might be hidden behind some kind of fleshy material, but I believe there is some kind of a receiver that allows to where we hear like a little chip of some kind. Even Bill Benny is actually saying he believes he is chipped. Anyway, this is actually going on. A person can find it on 2012 targeted individual evidences. Um, 131 Kimber, James Lyko. These are all different YouTube things you can look at and see the actual White House um, meeting, where there's a room full of about 200 to 300 targeted individuals from around the U.S. and Canada giving their testimony. I tried to look it up on bioethics.gov, but whenever I try to, it blocks it. So, um, but that's the main thing. It's just the realization that I thought everybody in my hometown was genuinely good people. I don't know, Tanya, if you're still there, if you thought the same thing about your people you grew up with, but I literally thought they were just nice, conservative, religious, overwhelmingly um, pretty nice people have their mistakes and flaws, but I certainly didn't think in all those years that I was the subject. I knew I was in pain on my side constantly every day, but I wasn't paranoid to think that I knew the government used to, I just didn't think that. And I thought I had nice doctors that were trying, but they don't know everything. But it wasn't until I got the V2K in 2016 that I and heard of targeted individuals that realized, oh, this is happening to other people. And some of you, you're watching this, you know what I'm talking about. It's happened to you. And finally, pieces of the puzzle are coming together. And now it's looking at whether it be the doctors or the police. And in my case, people look at, well, the reason why they did this is because I did. It's like in my case, I can't figure out anything. I had what they call more religious scrupulosity, which it just made me highly more sensitive to not hurt anybody, to be respectful of, just overly sensitive conscience for all those years, to not hurt anybody. And if I did, then I felt shitty and would try to make it. So I literally didn't do anything to piss off people. Um, I wasn't loud or boisterous about politics or religion. I always kept it to myself. I always studied that stuff, but I never went in chat rooms. And at that time, I never did YouTube stuff either. I didn't leave stuff on any YouTube, or I didn't write things down, just in my notes to myself about theology, or that was the main thing. But I never thought that people in my town were out to kill me. I just knew I was in pain. It wasn't until I started getting V2K, and then all this stuff was going on a nightly thing. But I knew somebody was fucking with me, and I knew there was no reason for it. So I just thought, if I just don't freak out, then they'll realize that I'm not bad or a criminal, or I'm not going to react in a bad way. And so they'll stop their harassment. Well, that never happened. It just kept on getting worse and worse. And then finally, got injured, and then they had to refix this. And now my strong arm is now my weak arm, and I had to learn to walk again. But even though Dallas is a small town with maybe 15,000, 20,000 at most in the surrounding area, not one, and it's a very religious town too, with tons of churches and conservative churches, evangelicals, and which I understand. I pretty good people. I was raised in that environment, but I also could appreciate liberalism and humanism. I'd studied that, and I know there's good people in both. I just know it. but I was more, I had a, anyway, I still have respected religious conservatives and even religious liberals and some humanists. But anyway, I'm just going off on a, that's scrupulosity or OCD. You're always thinking about that stuff. But it wasn't until V2K that you realize they really are, they are part of a plan, and I'm part of a plan where they're actually trying with V2K and synthetic telepathy, they're trying to kill you to cash in on potentially life insurance that they didn't tell you about, that nobody told you about. They're just going to, if you do die, they're going to pretend that they know you, look at all your stuff, your notes, they'll ask your family members, your friends, and maybe cut them in some of the action financially when you die. So whether it be doctors or police, and they're running, especially in the year 2020, and it's about to be 2021, when they're having this pandemic and people aren't able to start work. If this gets out that during a pandemic where there's all of this pressure to get this vaccine, this potentially life saving vaccine, which I don't know if this is real, but it is weird to have not just one, but three or four companies make a different vaccine for a life, this terrible disease, which has never happened in the history of science or medicine. But suddenly, within a span of 10 months, three or four different companies have come up with a vaccine, life saving vaccine. And I'm worried, like other TIs are worried, that something could be put in one or a few of these vaccines that could give them the same thing. Maybe not instantaneously, but within a year, they might flip a switch and it gives them V2K. It gives them synthetic telepathy. And they may not do it all at once, but it could be within a year after the majority of people get it. Different vaccines, then a percentage of them starts getting these symptoms. And then they can't blame it on the vaccine maker, because that's the thing, the government made sure that if you get this vaccine, that nobody can ever sue a vaccine maker. They can only sue the government. And the government's not going to admit it. The sheriff and the police of your hometowns aren't going to admit that they're involved in something so devious, because that would also show that they were part of it. So, and it's going to be like the government saying, well, all these little religious towns keep on calling Washington, D.C. the swamp. They're calling Washington, D.C. and Congress and House of Representatives and the senators the evil swamp. But what most people don't know is that these little same towns with the same police and all the religious and this and that are willing to turn on their own citizens in these little towns and turn them over for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars for torture and suicide. And in essence, the federal government can blackmail these little towns with their city halls and mayors and police and sheriffs, because as much as they can blackmail the federal government can also blackmail the same people, the mayors, the police of these small towns, because even though it was the federal government that created this program, it was the mayors and doctors and police of these small towns that said, yes, we'll take your blood money and go along with this sick, immoral, evil program. But they can both be part of the denial system and blackmail each other. So it's like instant, so nobody's going to spark against that because it's got instant blackmail all over it. They can blackmail the small town mayors, the police, but if nobody opens their mouth about it, if nobody criticizes or say anything, they might get rich off it too. So there's a big carrot. There's a big carrot of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, if they keep their mouths shut and don't tell it or admit that you've tortured 1, 2, 5 people, 10 people throughout your internship or throughout your practice or throughout your mayorship, or if you're a senator or House of Representatives, that you knowingly went along with the program, then that means that the swamp is not just Washington, D.C., but you going along with this program makes you just as bad, if not worse than any swamp that anybody dreamed of was happening in Washington, D.C. Everybody knows there's fairs, people get mad, they get drunk, they shoot somebody, they kill, they murder a prostitute. These are all horrible things, but people can lose their temper. They can do something they normally wouldn't do. But the idea of a lot of these people in these religious towns or big cities going along with with doctors, with a torture and torture to the point of suicide program, and getting paid for it for 10 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, hoping that that person dies, whether through torture or even suicide. And then, who knows, a month or two after, collecting multiple life insurance payments, unbeknownst to the person who just died, that's why they suffered their entire life for 20, 30, or 40 years, is that somebody they may not have ever even known or heard of in that same small town or big city decided to use them as their financial parachute. And this is something that insurance groups need to be made aware of. So in 2020 and in 2021, just a week away, um, I hope that this word gets out and that people start being made aware that this is a real thing. Um, and I encourage people, if they're skeptics or doubters, just look at the bioethics meeting, Obama's presidential bioethics meeting, and you'll see it's not just if the White House took it serious enough in 2011 and in 2012 to force its doors open out of pressure, then everybody else should be. Yeah, it's that real, and it's real enough for the White House to admit that it's real and open its doors. So it's kind of like this is not conspiracy theory stuff anymore. They can't just leave it at the door being a conspiracy theory. They open their door and twice, and listen to people for 9 hours of testimony. And but the thing is, they know that they're the ones that helped create it. So what are they going to do? Are they going to arrest themselves? Not likely. Same with their hometown, small town police, and are they going to arrest themselves? Are they going to admit that they're part of it? That they're part of this torture? Or is your doctor going to feel shame and guilt enough to admit they were part of a torture and suicide thing? And are they going to admit, how many times have they done this to other people in the hometowns where you're from? This is going on, and whatever noise they've been able to, it's not on CNN, it's not on Fox News, Fox News, but there is enough of people that are Frank Allen, Ella Free, uh, Catherine Horton, Romola D. There's a bunch of us doing these types of videos, so hopefully um, we can make enough noise, Vulcan Wolverine, that people can find out and they won't be lost or alone in that. And that we'll keep our eyes open during the next year. And it's a weird thing. We don't want to scare people too much because we don't know what this new vaccine will be. But we also want to make enough of an awareness that it's the same, you know, the husband's, Dr. Fauci, is trying to help, and the wife is trying to help targeted individuals help us. But we also know the very government is the one that did the targeted individuals. And so, how much are they really trying to help us? Or, are they trying to just help the government along by giving more spans of time so that the government can do whatever it is they're trying to do behind the scenes with this, and giving them more time by saying we're going to have going on with another pretend court trial, or we're having a court trial that's coming up in a few months, or another court trial, or another court trial, and with bated breath hearing and waiting for another thing and another thing and another thing, and then nothing happens. We don't hear anything more. I mean, it's almost like groups literally need to be more, not just once every, I mean, easier said than done, but yeah, I appreciate the ones who've actually gone out there and organized Ella Freeze groups that have organized and tried to make it more public. So, and as long as we keep doing that, and hopefully these types of things online, people be made more aware of it. So, anyway, I just for the people, Tanya, sorry it took a little while. I don't know how long you're up there, so but I hope you're doing good and have a good New Year's, and for the rest of you, um, I'll do this again in a couple days. So sorry for my appearance. It's a little dark here. I don't have the light on. So anyway, I'll talk to you in a few days. Okay. Okay. Bye. Let's see.